Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and it is day 24 of Bookmas. We have made it to the end. Merry Christmas Eve to those of you who celebrate. I hope you have a wonderful day this evening and into tomorrow. I hope you can spend it with loved ones. And if you don't celebrate, I hope that you just have a great day. Let's talk about what I got read yesterday and let's see what this final book is because I don't have a clue. So we did read the final book or final story in Mystery for Christmas, which was edited by Cynthia Manson. That one was called Who Killed Father Christmas by Patricia Moyes. And that one was just par for the course. It was fine. So it was basically, again, a department store Santa, but it's over in England and they call him Father Christmas instead of Santa Claus. So, somebody murders him and they have to figure out who it was and what happened. So it was fine. It was a short little mystery. I'm not big on short stories. I'm not big on mysteries. So that was part of it. But also, some of them didn't even really fit the mystery theme, I wouldn't say. My favorite, I think, really was that one with I forget what it's called again. The Plot Against Santa Claus by James Powell, which was actually Santa Claus and the elves, and it was just so ridiculous and over the top that it was entertaining. It did have a lot of like social commentary, written in the 70s. So yeah, it was fine. It was, if you're a short story person or a mystery person, I think this is a fun one. It was fun. They were really easy to read every other day leading up to Christmas. So we did finish that. I ended up giving it 2 stars because it really just wasn't quite my thing. And like I said, some of them didn't really fit the vibes. And being short stories, they weren't all that wonderful and great. But I think somebody else would get more enjoyment out of this than I did. But it was fine. So there's that one. And I did also finish 12 Days of Mistletoe by Jen Atkinson. I did end up giving this 2 stars. If it wasn't for the service dog aspect or the emotional support aspect, it would have been 5 stars. I love this. Other than that, I love this. I ate it up. I love the characters. I loved we had grandma who was meddlesome, and the rest of the family. It would have been 5 stars if it wasn't for that. And that's kind of personal to me because I, have a service dog. I've done training to train other service dogs. I worked in the veterinary clinic, which veterinary clinics, they are not well educated, or at least not the ones in my experience, aren't really well educated on service animals. But because I had that training background too, like I did dog training and such, and I helped others train their service animals. And then I have Nidra, who's my service animal. I had that background, and like I said, she got some things right, but it's just so frustrating because there is a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of people that take advantage and scam the system because you have those fake registrations and such. And she had like accurate information at some points, but at other points she didn't, which I kind of ranted about yesterday, so I'm not going to go too far into it. And it did kind of smooth out a little bit because, in the beginning, obviously, she was setting everything up. And I think if she'd either, kept that she was a service dog and just set, Elliot, the love interest, straight, and then carried on with the rest of the plot because it's fake dating. So, yeah, they could have had that initial animosity, him not realizing she was a service dog and finding that out, but then to still keep it as part of the plot with the blackmail from the grandma. That one was like, I didn't like it. I didn't like that she was bucking the system by not telling them and just trying to hide the dog because that's a problem. Like, yes, this is a legitimate service dog. It is task trained. And then also not being very clear about, like, in the synopsis on the back, which might just be the publishers. That could not be the author. That could be the publishers. It says emotional support animal, but then she has some misinformation about the cats being service animals and horses, which cats are not. They're allowed to be emotional support, which is different. They're not trained, and they can't go like to public spaces and such. Where it's dogs and miniature horses, but she's like, like I ranted about yesterday, she said horses, and he's like, horses, and she's like, horses. doesn't explain, well, miniature horses, because they're smaller and such. But anyway, so I don't think she did her due diligence. And then like towards the end, like she goes dress shopping with grandma, and she's like, she had to convince, the shop lady to let Noel come in. And it's like, if you're a service dog handler, you need to know your rights. And so she could have used that as an access issue, because that does happen. Like legitimate service dog handlers face access issues all the time. So she could have used it like that, but it's like she didn't know, like she was doing something wrong by bringing her service dog. It's a legit service dog. Like if it was an emotional support dog, then no, you wouldn't be allowed to bring it in public places. But it's a service dog. It's task trained. Like, and so you should know your rights and know, and she's like, she goes everywhere with me. So if she goes everywhere with you, then why are you acting like that? So I think she just had this idea, she wanted to do the mental health rep and have a service dog, but she didn't do her due diligence. And so that just really rubbed me the wrong way. I would, even with as frustrating as that was, and I would be interested in reading more by this author, because, like I said, if it wasn't for that, this would have been 5 stars. But because of that, and because as service dog handlers, we face so many issues with fake service dogs and misinformation and such. Like I can't get past that, her not doing her due diligence. So it ended up a 2-star, but I did love it. So take that. If you do read this, like, please, it was really great, but please keep in mind that there is misinformation, and service dogs and emotional support animals are not the same thing. So there is that. And I did read Christmas Presents by Lisa Unger. I read like 167 pages last night, and then finished the last little bit today, this morning, before I came out here. And I'm giving this 4 stars for a short, like, novella holiday thriller. It was a lot of fun. It pulls you right in. I like the characters. I will say I clocked in on who it was, like the twist, um, early on, but she did a good job making me kind of doubt myself. Well, like, maybe, but all the clues were pretty obvious. But then she made me doubt myself, and I didn't give it 5 stars because the connection to why that individual was involved, like, just fell a little flat for me, honestly. But otherwise, I really enjoyed it. So you have our girl Madeline. This author definitely has a thing for the M names, at least in this story, because there was Madeline, there was a Mirabelle, there was a Maggie, um, and Miranda. And so, like, I kept getting confused with the M names. Like, wait, who is that? But otherwise, the characters are fine. So Madeline, she's in a small town, and when she was a teenager, there was this guy, and him and his mom moved to town, and there was rumors about him, and he was a bad boy, and she fell hard. She's the sheriff's daughter. And then basically her best friend ends up getting murdered by this guy. She gets injured, and then 2 other of her friends go missing at the same time, and they never find the body. So this is 10 years later. There's a podcast element with this podcaster and author coming into town to research. He does cold cases and such, and try to figure out what happened to these other 2 girls. And yeah, so just that twist and such, and the reason and the connection there fell a little flat. And then also there's a thing with her father that just felt very convenient. And so I didn't really like that all that much. But otherwise, like, if you're a thriller reader, like, this was a fun one for the holidays. It's not very Christmassy, other than it takes place at Christmas. And it was fun because, yesterday was the 23rd, and the events, that happened took place on the 23rd. So I was reading it, and she was like flashbacking to the events of 10 years ago, and that was on the 23rd. So that was really interesting. But yeah, I had a great time with this, and it was not nice, different break from, the more heartfelt and the contemporary romances and such. But there's that one. Unfortunately, I did not get to A Winter Dream at all, which I'm not mad about. This is only 266 pages. It's short. So, and like, there's blank pages as well. The other books I read by this author have all read really fast. So I'm definitely going to start this evening once we get back home and such. And I actually should probably be able to finish this tonight. If I don't, I'll definitely read it tonight, and then, once we're done playing games and such, I'll probably finish this tomorrow. So there's that one. Tonight we will be reading A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I've never read out of this edition, um, even though I read it every year. Like one year I listened to it, one year I read it out of like a collection I had that was last year. So I don't think I've ever read this edition. But it's really tiny, and it does have, like, at the end, it goes into like more like history and such as well. So it's not just the story about him like reading his Christmas Carol and such. So anyway, we'll be doing that tonight with my mother-in-law. So that will be fun. And then we need to figure out what this book is. So I think it's a hardcover. It's super, super thin. And I don't have a clue. I don't remember what this is. But I'm glad it's thin because, like I said, today's not going to be a big reading day until this evening once we get home and kind of settle down because we'll be with family. So, yeah, let's see what this is, though. I'm very curious. Like I said, my memory's not the greatest, so I don't have a clue if I can get this open, though. I taped it again too well. Okay. Now I can't find my fingers in there. Alright, let's see here. Okay. Still stuck. Oh, okay. I forgot all about this. So this is The Christmas Guest by, obviously forgot all about it, by Peter Swanson, just a little novella. And yeah, I've seen this around on BookTube, and I was still looking for something, and so I picked this one up. So let's go ahead and see what this is about. So it says, from New York Times bestselling author Peter Swanson comes a spectacularly spine-chilling story of an American student spending the holidays in a British manor house, where she discovers dangerous secrets and a grim history hidden behind a seemingly charming Christmas celebration. Ashley Smith, an American art student in London for her junior year, was planning on spending Christmas alone. But a last-minute invitation from fellow student Emma Chapman brings her to Starwood Hall, country residence of the Chapman family. The Cotswold Manor, festooned in pine boughs and crammed with guests for Christmas week, is a dream come true for Ashley. She is not only memorized by the cozy firelit house, the large family, and the charming village of Clevemoor, but also by Adam Chapman, Emma's aloof and handsome brother. But Adam is being investigated by the local police over a recent brutal slaying of a girl from the village, and there is a mysterious stranger who haunts the woodland path between Starwood Hall and the local pub. Ashley begins to wonder what kind of story she is actually inhabiting. Is she in a grand romance, a gothic tale, or has she wandered into something far more sinister and terrifying than she ever imagined? More than 30 years later, the events of that horrific week are revisited, along with a diary from that time. What began in a small English village in 1989 reaches its ghostly conclusion in modern-day New York many Christmas seasons later. All right, so this sounds like it's gonna be fun. So I'm ending with thrillers and, obviously a little inspirational one that's actually based on Joseph and his coat of many colors. So I'm excited for this, and it looks like it's going to be a very quick read. The font's nice and big, and like I said, it is super short. I think it's not even 100 pages, maybe. Nope, it sure is not. So 93 pages. So that's going to be fun. I got 93 pages, 85 pages, and 266 pages. So this is the lineup for today. And yeah, like I said, whatever I don't get read today, I will read tomorrow because we just play games and just relax. And so, yeah, this is the lineup, and I'm very excited to get to these. This is the last video of Bookmas. However, I am going to do another video once I get these finished up, just to kind of wrap up my thoughts on these ones as well. So that way, if you've been following along during Bookmas, you can get my final thoughts on these. And then I'll, of course, still have a wrap up like I normally do. It won't be as involved since there's a lot of books and I've gone in depth here. But that way, if you've been following along, you can kind of get my final thoughts. But that will probably come out, a day or two after Christmas. It just depends. But yeah, watch out for that video. Otherwise, that's it for Bookmas. If you've been following along, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books I've read uh, this season. If you read any of these ones, if you're a big Christmas Carol person as well, I would love to know that down in the comments below. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get this video up, and then we are having Mexican food for Christmas. So we're bringing red and green enchiladas and then Spanish rice. So I'm gonna do this video, then get those prepared before heading over to my mother-in-law's. So like I said, you celebrate. I hope you have a fantastic day. And if you don't, I hope you have a great day in general. I will see you guys later. Merry Christmas, everyone. Bye.